welcome to Fit to Speak. I'm Eugene Obah. So glad to have you with us. The Winter Olympics are over in Italy, but the tension surrounding ice in the United States has not melted. As the national conversation continues on and off the streets about the role of ice amid the deaths of Renee and Alex Pretti, Minnesota-based documentary director and filmmaker Rachel Mueller joins us to discuss the developments and the way forward as we begin the 7th season of this program. We'll get to our interview with Rachel in just a second, but first, I'd like to wish all of you a very, very belated Happy New Year. Yes, I know the statute of limitations have long passed for saying that, but class does not have an expiration date. And had this program aired earlier in the month, seemingly neither would Snowcrete. Earlier this month, I was in New York City, even got to see how the Ivy League lives at Columbia University. The hoi polloi need not apply or even walk around campus without a photo ID or a QR code. From my observations, walking around the city that never sleeps, or even the subway, thank goodness for that, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani might want to bring some lessons to DC Mayor Muriel Bowser about clearing snow. Another mayoral candidate who recently entered the fray might very well change that. Fortunately, snow is temporary. Well, what is permanent is our commitment to thought-leading and thought-provoking reporting and commentary and discussion on topical issues of importance, a commitment that will never waver even as some news organizations are losing sight of that, including the Washington Post. No Metro section, no sports section. They say that democracy dies in darkness, but I'm kind of sort of thinking that kowtowing in the light is the hot new slogan these days. Anyway, we are the antidote. And though we have nowhere near the resources that even a diminished Washington Post has, or any major media organization has for that matter, we will, in our own way, fill the vacuum. And a good example of this, one of the best examples that we have of this, of what we're doing here, has been our class-leading coverage of missing broadcast industry professional at the University of Maryland alum Terrence Woods, which in the 7+ years that he's been missing has received very little, and I mean very little, coverage from the establishment media on both sides of the Atlantic relative to other missing persons cases. Even more jarring vis-a-vis the coverage of Nancy Guthrie, the mother of NBC Today show host Savannah Guthrie, which, let me be clear, that case is sad in its own right. Let me point out, by the way, that in the UK, where Terrence worked and was a freelancer for Raw TV, which is based in the UK, and by the way, who wouldn't answer my questions about the duty of care or their company culture, the UK have devoted quite a bit of coverage to Savannah Guthrie's mother. The major UK publications have devoted quite a bit of coverage to her mother, who, keep in mind, is stateside. The articles, by contrast, from those same publications about Terrence, who, by the way, was stateside, reportedly in Idaho, working with Raw TV when he went missing. On the December edition of the show, we had Crime Redefined hosts Mehul Anjoria and Dion Mitchell, who are leading an independent investigation into his disappearance, one that resulted in a new GoFundMe page that was created after their old page was, for whatever reason, according to them in our interview, taken down by the crowdfunding site. You can catch up with that episode and learn more about the developments that have taken place in this case right here on this YouTube channel, youtube.com/the CSE channel, the link of which is in the description below, as with their crowdfunding page. And we also have a playlist that features all of our extensive coverage of Terrence's case, so do check that out. Now, to follow up on another story we mentioned at the end of last year, toward the beginning of this year, U.S. District Judge Beryl A. Howell entered a default judgment against TNR Productions LLC to the tune of nearly $14 million. That award to NOTV Novosti, the parent company of Russian state media outlet RT, who sold their interest in the award to Satori Agricultural Consultancy and Projects Management, was determined in arbitrated proceedings in Moscow that concluded in 2024, in which NOTV Novosti took civil action against TNR when nearly 4 years ago the company laid off all of its employees. This amid Russia's special operation. Invasion of Ukraine. Now, those of you who have watched this program for any length of time know that I have taken great personal interest in this story, great personal interest in this. Why? Because TNR was one of two production companies that I previously worked for, of which RT just so happened to be the client. And I also take interest because, much like what's been going on as of late, with elected officials trying to rewrite history, it is important that we correct the narrative, including this kind of stuff where you see unforeseen business interruption events. Crock of horse manure, if you ask me. What's even worse is that there are some of you, and I know this for a fact, there are some of you who still believe that the Biden administration shut RT down here in the United States. That it's all Joe Biden's fault. And let me explain something to you. And actually, I'll do that by asking people this. If you really do believe, if you truly do believe that the Biden administration shut RT down close to 4 years ago, then why is it that the powers that be did not sue the U.S. government on First Amendment grounds? Why wasn't that the case? After all, we do have a First Amendment. We do have such thing as a freedom of the press, right? Or at least did, if the arrest of Don Lemon is anything to go by. Anyway, I rest my case. I have said from the beginning of this program nearly 6 years ago that we need journalism that consistently serves the public interest. Consistently serves the public interest. There are some that are doing a very good job, but we need more of it. And we also need, especially here in this United States, we need a true independent media ecosystem, a system that is free of corporate interests and free of government interests. Now, fortunately for us, we are at the forefront of helping to build that ecosystem. We're very fortunate to be doing that. And we, unlike Jeff Bezos, are going to protect the First Amendment. First Amendment has to be protected at all costs. Otherwise, just like this downtown DC office building, it may very well soon be relegated to the dustbin of history. And joining me now is documentary director and filmmaker Rachel Lauren Mueller. Rachel, welcome to the show. It is great to have you on our program. Great to really talk about what has been going on, sadly, in Minnesota. Let's get started with that. It has been the epicenter of what's been going on with ICE and everything that has been going on with this. The deaths of Renee Good and Alex Pretti. Alex's death was ruled a homicide. And Tom Homan, the Trump administration's border czar, has been drawing down the number of ICE agents. A small contingent apparently will remain over there. And the FBI have advised that they are not going to cooperate with the state of Minnesota insofar as Minnesota's investigation in this. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, they're not going to provide them with information on this. You've been seeing what's happening, Rachel, on the ground. You've been reporting on this and everything else. Take me through your reaction to all of the developments that have been going on, and what have you been seeing over in Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, I think the so we're here, we're talking, it's mid-February, and I think the ways things have changed over the past, I would say, several months has been pretty drastic. From December, when ICE really started showing up and was mostly focused in the Somali community, East African community, to January, which is when both Alex and Renee Good died, to now, to what we're seeing, which is I would say, a moment of exhale. I think the Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin Cities community feels that it appears that there is less ICE activity than there has been. So I think that although there is a lot of mistrust around what the Borders Are Holman was said about the drawdown, he was not very specific about any details about the number of people that would be pulled back, the number of people that would be left, what sort of timeline that would happen on. So I think there's a real question about what that actually looks like. Um, I would say like the overall intensity of what it has been like to be here is something that there's been all of these news reports and stories about, but it's one thing to be here and living in a moment when I can walk outside my front door and see an ICE caravan that's going down the street in this small residential area. Really, the sense of a city being occupied, I think, is how we've talked about it. Yeah, I don't know if there's more specific
It's
questions you
an
have or like,
occupation, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting because that's been described even about, where we are, in DC, with the National Guard,
Hmm.
being around. It's almost like a military occupation.
Hmm.
And you talk about trust, right? In terms of this, or whether or not, the people of Minnesota can really trust what the administration, and, of course, Tom Homan being in the administration,
Hmm.
um, are saying insofar as the drawdown. So then that, how, I guess, really with the tensions,
Hmm.
going on with that, it's like, how does that impact kind of sort of the trust in terms of the movements, and everything when people move about their daily lives and when they read or watch a lot of what's been going on over there.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would say that there's a sense right now um, of kind of waiting to see. I know there's been a lot of activists who've been outside and I should say activists and just community members, people who are not activist organizers, outside the Whipple building, which is where has been one of the main deployment sites for ICE agents. They like stage there, leave, come out of there, and then that's also where they bring people after they've been detained to the Whipple building. And the Whipple, the folks that have been monitoring the Whipple space say that there's just a similar amount of activity of ICE coming and going. Um, so I think this idea of a drawdown, it in that regard is like we're not really seeing it. However, I will say that the like in my immediate neighborhood, which is very close, I live about 6 blocks from where Renee Good was killed. Live about a mile and a half from where Alex Pretti was killed, and so this area has been a very like a hot spot for ICE for the past 2 months. And that the visible presence of what that means is they're not here. The past 6 days it has been really very quiet since Holman announced this drawdown. What we have also seen at the same time is a lot of ICE activity in the suburbs. So it could be that they have moved to the suburbs. So when we talk about trust, it's really I think the lack of specifics and the lack of details really leaves the Minnesota community wondering what actually is happening. Um, and and I think the Governor Walz and Mayor Jacob Fry have similarly offered no specifics around what they understand to be the details. They might not know. I'm not totally sure, but it does feel like right now the Twin Cities community is a little bit in the dark about what is happening.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, Rachel. Again, kind of sort of the darkness, and sometimes what comes out, um, really needs to be brought into light.
Mhm.
I really think so. And then kind of going on sort of the trust portion of it, because that's kind of sort of, I think, a sort of a thread in this. I mean, we look at the videos. We've looked at the videos, sadly, of these deaths.
Mhm.
And, you being especially very, very close to that, I mean, that I'm sure has, when it hits that close to home, really, really affects you. But then it's like what Christy Nome and some of the others are
Mhm.
saying about these videos and what they say they see
Mhm.
versus what we actually see
Mhm.
in the videos. I mean, is it gaslighting? Is it gaslighting? I mean,
Right.
are we crossing, I dare say, are we crossing Orwellian territory in terms of what's been going on?
I mean, I think if you watch the video of Renee Good, which is maybe the less obviously, I would say like the Alex Pretty's death looked like an execution, and I don't know how you would watch that footage and regard it in any other way. And there's so many angles of it that it's very clear that he was disarmed before he was shot. Um, I think Renee Good, you maybe could have more ambivalence about whether or not she was trying to ram the ICE officer with her car. I think the New York Times did a really excellent visual investigation into that video footage that really goes to
We
show
can
that
also
it's like her
see at the
car
same
tires were
time,
turned
he's beginning to lift his
and
other arm.
all of this.
On these cameras, we can see what's happening around Agent Ross. The other agent is yelling orders and reaching into Miss Good's SUV. Her front tire spins as she continues turning right. Agent Ross is at least a few feet away from Miss Good's SUV. He does not appear to move out of the way. As the SUV rolls forward, the agent unholsters his firearm. We see in his cell phone video at this moment the camera drifting off to the left. The agent is no longer focused on filming. It's at this point in the cell phone video where it first looks and sounds like the agent's getting knocked violently. On the other camera, we can see what's happening. Here is Agent Ross aiming his gun at Miss Good. And here is his outstretched arm leaning toward her vehicle, which is barely visible behind the Tahoe. His phone, which is gripped in his left hand, flips over when the agent's hand lands on the front of the vehicle. There's an audible thud when it hits. The camera rotates up towards the sky. Again, while it appears the agent's getting knocked over, we can see that's not the case from the other angle, which shows he's standing with his hand near the headlight, his torso and legs away from the vehicle. In the cell phone footage, the agent's face flashes on screen, then it goes black. The other angle shows us why. We can see the agent's foot sliding, his hand bracing against the SUV, and his arm getting pressed into his chest.
I would also say there's been interviews done with law enforcement after the fact that say if there's a moving vehicle, you get out of the way. Like there's a you as a person have an ability to respond in that kind of dangerous situation, and that agent chose not to respond that way. He chose to fire his gun, uh, and so I think the administration's immediate characterization of Renee Good's action as an act of domestic terrorism is, I mean, Orwellian is a good way to describe it. It's this double think, really pushing an American people to tell you what they're perceiving. And I would say on a personal level, so my family obviously they know that I'm here. I've been checking in on me really regularly, and my some of my extended family argued really vehemently that Renee Good was trying to run over this officer for like 24 hours. He was having this argument, and it wasn't until later on in the day I'd found out he hadn't even watched the video. And so there's a sense too, I think, about the American public's lack of despite the camera is our greatest tool right now. We are using it and people are using it in really incredible ways. And even still, people are deciding not to engage with that and make a choice for themselves. And I think to me, that feels very scary that when you have an American populace that is just willfully choosing to not watch for themselves and make their own determination of what they're seeing, we become a public that is very easy to sway by whomever is in power.
It's scary, isn't it, Rachel? I mean, where does media literacy come into play in terms of this? But
Yeah, great question. And I think is especially a potent question in this time when when we can create really, really realistic looking AI videos. Our media literacy needs to become that much more perceptive. Yeah, it's media literacy, and I think it's also a willingness to engage with information that's being put out there in a way that is challenging your own, I think, maybe political alignments. I think we live in a
preconceived
time.
notions,
Exactly, exactly. Like the polarized spaces that we find ourselves in are not helpful in these regards at all, because it ends up w- challenging our own biases is probably the hardest thing we could do, and we need to be doing that all the time in order to be have a level of media literacy, I believe.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember even during my time as a student, I remember that I had to do even a considering the other side paper, and that was the hardest paper that I've ever had to do because it's like it forces you to challenge your preconceived
Mhm.
notions, and I mean, like how much is, I guess, our society at large in terms of sort of you know for lack of a better term, the divisiveness. How much of that is playing a role in the reactions? I think you kind of touched on that, but how much is it playing a
Mhm.
role in terms of the reaction? Because it's like if somebody watches, Fox or One American News or whatever, whatever, they'll say, okay, they'll say a certain thing. If people watch MS Now or CNN, whatever,
Mhm.
they'll react a certain way. Is there kind of sort of a middle ground in all of this? Is there, like something there to be looked at as in this?
It's interesting because I think like, and this is maybe not addressing your question exactly, so redirect me if you
Hmm.
need to. I think one of the things that's been pretty remarkable about what I've been seeing here is the ways in which uh, Minnesotans have responded to this occupation that is really not about political affiliation at all. Like, people are responding from a place of, this is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to prevent my neighbors from being torn out of their car when they're US citizens, when they're anybody, but like especially if we're talking about immigration and the who deserves to get torn out of a car, I would say nobody, but at a base level, if we're talking about you want, anyway, I'm getting distracted.
No,
I
no,
think
no, you're good. You're good. Because I mean, you're getting to something that I think is interesting. Because I think in some ways, in our society, we've lost our humanity. We've lost
absolutely.
the humanity. So
Mhm.
it's like we need to center that in terms of all of this, don't we?
Right. Right, because I think the difference you see even between the Obama administration, which the Obama administration deported, I don't know the exact statistics, but it might even still be more than the Trump
Yeah,
administration
he was
has.
called the porter in chief.
Right. So but the way that you saw the Obama administration deporting people was not in this terrorizing, violent, virtually indiscriminate way that what we've been seeing here in Minneapolis. And I think the response of the Twin Cities and Minnesotan communities to that is the thing that has happened. It's like, this isn't about politics. This is about saying this is wrong. This isn't the way that American society should function. And so the any sort of like political ideology division in this moment, I feel like has fallen by the wayside, which is pretty remarkable to see. People really rallying around just our shared humanity and what it means to be a good neighbor to each other.
Yeah, and I think also appealing to our better angels, I think is
Mhm.
something that is so critical, and hopefully that really carries the day as things progress.
Mhm.
Um, when we look at leadership
Mhm.
in not just this administration, but also where you are in
Mhm.
Minnesota. We have the governor, but Tim Walz, Amy Klobuchar, she is running.
Mhm.
Um, what has been your sense, or maybe the sense of the public, I guess, in terms of what people make of the response by Governor Walz and the leadership
Mhm.
over in Minnesota? Are they doing enough? Should more be done? What are you seeing there, Rachel?
Yeah, I would say the general sense that I'm getting about Governor Walz and Mayor Fry's response is that they are fairly absent. The They have been vocal in not wanting ICE in the city. They have been very clear with the Minneapolis and St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter at the time, not having the police force support um, federal immigration enforcement. But they haven't, beyond their, I would say, like verbal disdain towards these raids, they haven't done a lot. I think for the past 2 months, neighbors have been paying other neighbors' rents, folks that have been sheltering in place and may have lost their jobs. Neighbors have been getting groceries and delivering those groceries to people's homes. Neighbors have been doing other people's laundries. Neighbors have set up school patrols so that if ICE comes to a school, people can remain safe. Neighbors have been organizing rides home for children at school. I think and all of these things are theoretically what a city government should do, that we take care of our citizens. We um, there was a moment where Governor Walz called in the National Guard, and the question was, who is the National Guard for? Is the National Guard here to protect observers who are watching ICE from negative ICE retaliation? Is the National Guard here to prevent people from protesting and expressing anger, or however we might have protests? Is the National Guard here to help with ICE? It was all very unclear, and I will say the National Guard being here hasn't, their presence, I think, has been, I mean, you haven't seen them very much. They've been at the Whipple building, but not very much out in the streets. After Alex Pretti's death, they were present in like blocking off an entire neighborhood, which again was unclear. It's like we have a whole area of the city that is now cordoned off. For what purpose? Whom does this serve? Who are you trying to keep safe? Or what are you trying to keep safe? And that's been the extent I have seen of our state and city leadership has been absence, I would say, for the most part.
I mean, what all when you think about what people are doing, is there something to be said as well about people power? That the power is really in the people, not so much in terms of the elected officials, but that people that are on
Absolutely.
the ground.
Yeah.
It's so critical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's amidst this kind of reign of terror, I have seen the most beautiful ways of people coming together, and folks talking about how this is the kind of community I always wanted. I wanted to live in a place where I literally know all my neighbors now. I didn't before, but I know them now, and I know how to ask for like a cup of sugar, like very literally. Or just today, someone was like, I really need a shelving unit for my garage to put, it's like, and people are like, oh yeah, I've got an extra one lying around. I mean, it's like we're seeing kind of the ways that we take care of us. The phrase that's been going around a lot here is we keep us safe. And what I'm hoping to see as this ICE drawdown happens is that it becomes, we take care of each other beyond the sense of immediate safety. What are the other ways that we can show up for one another? I One of the moments, so I've been filming a lot and embedded with some community groups, and I was speaking with a woman, an elderly woman in her 70s, who was just sitting thoughtfully, and she said, she was a retired school teacher. She said, I'm not really sure why we have a city government right now. Like, they're not, she's like, I don't really know what their point is. We're doing a pretty good job taking care of each other. I don't really know why we need them, which I just thought I will never forget that. It was kind of a lovely comment.
Wow, 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 wow. And I mean, it's just so inspiring to hear that people especially where you are taking care of each other,
Mhm.
are doing the work, and especially out in the community, and
Mhm.
for each other, which is just wonderful. And I definitely wish out in our nation's capital we see that a little more. I think that DC and really this here the DMV has a lot to learn there in
Mm.
that regard. Rachel, you've been doing a lot of reporting. You said you're embedded.
Mhm.
How important is telling this story? How important is it to really be using the camera as a
Mhm.
tool to
Mhm.
really showcase what has been going on over in Minnesota?
Yeah, yeah. I think as I said earlier, the camera has become maybe one of the most important tools of the modern day. I think very specifically of my camera, which is large. I have like a large video camera. It has mics and monitors and the whole thing. It's not a phone and it's not a small DSLR. I think of my camera as a weapon and as a tool. And there have been excuse me, as a weapon and as a shield. There's been some specific moments where I was out filming and in confrontations with ICE, and the ICE agents he was about to smash a woman's car window and the thing was threatening her. And I was standing right there, and he turned and he saw me and my big camera. And he kind of took a step back and I think was a little bit surprised. And the woman was able to go and like move her car away. He didn't smash her window. Um, and there is a obviously ICE agents know that they're being recorded. It's really obvious. People have their phones out. Uh, and the reason that Alex Pretti and Renee's Good's deaths, we're even aware of them in some regard, is because those deaths were filmed. Um, I think the role that I see my camera playing in the longer term is also different. So cameras have these different moments, these different roles. As a documentary filmmaker, I don't do breaking news. I do things that take a lot more time. Both to when I say I'm embedded with the community, it took me weeks to be able to access a particular community group and to be able to get their trust, and to really, I think the idea is to show the decision making that's happening behind the scenes, to show that it's like these are landscapers and gardeners and a tech supervisor and a teacher who have all come together to really think about what community safety means. And I think the trust that they have in me to be able to take this story and share it is pretty profound. And I think why it's important is because there's a role for breaking news. There's a role for these very fast turnaround pieces. People need information and we need it quickly. The longer form pieces, I think, are equally as important in helping us understand the felt sense of this moment, both the fear people are living with, the sense of community that people are building, um, the ways that people are asking questions of one another. And all of that is something that's going to come out better in a film than it will in a news story. So that's really where I see my role in this being.
And it's very important because as journalists, as filmmakers, we are first draft of history. And really that thinking about that, and especially our First Amendment, is just so critical, and it's so important
Mhm.
that we protect that First Amendment, because if we don't have that, then I make mention in the commentary that's earlier on in the program that really, if we don't have our First Amendment, then really there's just no hope. Really, as a society, because a society really needs important information
Mhm.
about what it is that's going on. And the last question I have for you, Rachel, is that where do you see this going from here, insofar as what's been happening in where you are in Minnesota? What does what's the path forward? Do you see a path forward
Mm.
in terms of all of this?
Yeah, I'm really hopeful that I should say, I think what has happened in Minneapolis is a warning. I think the blatant disregard for what we have previously considered as basic American rights, which is the right to privacy, you know, the the right to a fair trial, the right to not be arrested on, some of these, we're seeing the deterioration of that in real time. And I think that is absolutely a warning that people should take very seriously. And frankly, it's very, it's terrifying to me to have seen that in real time, experienced that in my community. Um, I think we also are seeing the normalization of surveillance culture and the ways in which we are allowing people to surveil us, whether it's through your Ring cameras or through, I mean, ICE has been documenting people that have been exercising their legal rights as Americans to observe and, recording their faces and making threats. And all of this speaks to the rise of authoritarianism. And I think it is, just because the federal agents are pulling out of our city does not mean that this isn't going to happen elsewhere. It does not mean that this isn't going to just ramp up in some other regard. So I think going forward, I mean, I hope that there's a sense of taking this very seriously, and that this drawdown doesn't mean, it can't erase the deterioration of rights that we've seen, or Alex Pretti or Renee's Good's deaths. I guess I just see this as a warning. I see it as a warning.
I hope, Rachel, that the public hears every single word that you just said, because this kind of stuff is serious, and this is big, and this could happen to any other community, and people need to pay attention, and people need to wake up big time, because this stuff is happening, sadly. And I think that really the reporting and everything, on the filmmaking side that you're doing is so critical. And I hope that you keep that up. And I hope that we can have you back on our program to continue these conversations, because these kind of stuff are things that people, as I said, need to pay attention to. And I hope that people heed warning all this. So, Rachel Lord Mueller, documentary director and filmmaker, really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Eugene. Really great chatting with you.
Do join us next week when BL Strang-Moya, the creative director of the Ocean City Film Festival, joins us for an all-new edition of Fit to Speak on March 4th, the day before the 10th season of the festival. Our entertainment division was very fortunate to have been part of the first Ocean City Film Festival in 2017, when we debuted our documentary short on independent artist and activist Radio Raheem Renaissance Man, which you can see right here on this channel. If you haven't had a chance to see it yet, here's a little taste.
I guess I would describe myself as an artist activist, right? I make up a word right now, artivist, right? Artist activist. So essentially all that means is utilizing the creative process of art, whether it be poetry, whether it be music, which I do a lot of, whether it be painting, muralism, whatever aspect of art and the creative output that I can do to raise consciousness about issues that are ignored by mainstream media.
Headed for the center of your eyes. The actual true living opposition comes alive. I'm an angel from hell, trying to reach heaven. In front of me, a bunch of pigs loaded with weapons. Human rights watch every second on the clock. Another child is shot because of where they walk. How many more have to die before the goal goes goodbye? Knocking at your door because you never show our views. The Occupy movement never covered by the news.
We want people to think outside of what, media and mainstream corporations want us to think. So whether it's an issue that's going on abroad, overseas, or whether it's an issue happening right here in Washington, D.C., it's irrelevant. Whether it's happening to someone who's black, white, brown, race, location, it's all irrelevant. On the case of injustice and oppression, it's imperative that we raise our voices for those who are ignored. And a great way for myself to do that is through utilizing my natural skills and abilities, and that happens to be through creative means of art, specifically music. So just raising the consciousness is really what my objective is through my art.
Rise up.
Wow, nearly 10 years after that debut, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I remain very, very proud of the Radio Raheem documentary short. I think it's really one of the finest work that we've done up to this point. And I remain equally proud to have supported the Ocean City Film Festival and the ancillary events throughout much of the time since 2017, especially the Originals Online and the Originals Only events. Those have been absolutely terrific. So really, I hope you'll be able to join us. Thank you so much for watching. Listen, there's going to be a lot more where that came from, so you better stay tuned to catch it all. In the meantime, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media accounts for more information, including all of the bonus content that you'll see from today's show. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell on our YouTube channel so that you do not miss any of our episodes. And do visit us on our Substack page, csemedia.substack.com, to support all of the work that we do here. Until next time, I'm Eugene, and remember, we will not be silenced.